Well, I'm not sure where to start. The past few weeks have been pretty tough for me. I'd lost my mother last spring to cancer. It caused a great deal of grief among my family. However, my father took it the worst. He was never the same after Mom's death. He'd lock himself in his house all alone, spacing himself from the rest of the world, spacing himself from me. It was odd. Throughout his entire life, he's always been so outgoing. My mother, my sister, and I were all he had. Now that my older sister had grown up, got married, and moved a few towns over, I guess I was all he had now. 2 weeks ago, I'd received a call. I was on 4chan, an infamous image board site, reading the comments in one of those "you laugh, you lose" threads. Ugh, whatever happened to original content? Alright, straying away from the topic. Having been in front of my monitor for hours in dead silence, I'd been caught off guard when my ringtone, Joey Scarberry's Believe It or Not, blared from my phone's tiny yet powerful speakers. I nearly jumped out of my seat. I grabbed my phone and checked the caller ID. It was the local hospital, calling to tell me that my father had killed himself. A week later, my sister came down for the funeral. It was nice to see her again after all these years, even though it was under harsh circumstances. She didn't bring that douchebag of a husband with her either. We shared a few hugs, talked about the deceased for a while, and then she was on her way. His house and all of its contents were given to me. Needless to say, it was a nice step up from my one-bedroom apartment. I decided to go snooping around in the new place the following day. Maybe clean up the place a bit. Honestly, I had no clue what I'd find in there. For all I know, he'd lost all sense of modesty following the death of my mother. I was at the front door. Upon grabbing the doorknob, an instant feeling of dread overcame my body. I froze up. The idea of being in the same room that my father had hung himself in didn't sit well with me. I shook my head and swallowed the disturbing feelings. I took a deep breath, prepared myself, I closed my eyes, and opened the door. The front door led me into a hallway that split in two directions. In front of me was the door, leading into the bathroom. To the right of me was the living room. Expecting the worst, I turned the corner. To my surprise, everything was in pristine condition. I scanned the area. There were a few couches surrounding an ancient-looking television set. My father had never been the tech-savvy. What caught my eye, though, was a large fireplace near the seating. I didn't remember this. Granted, I'd only been in the house a handful of times before. But from recollection, this wasn't there before. Now, the fireplace isn't exactly what caught my attention. It was the item mounted above it. It was a large framed portrait of my mother, surrounded with candles on the fireplace mantel. Something just seemed a bit off. She had the consenting smirk on her face as if to say, "I know something you don't." Again, that eerie feeling. I really felt as if I wasn't supposed to be in this house. Being the kind of person I was, I decided to stick around for a while longer. Venturing into the kitchen, I snooped around. Cupboards were filled with new-looking dish sets, and the fridge was filled with nothing but beer and water. Good old Dad. A thought had crossed my mind. I should check out the master bedroom, the room where he'd hung himself. I pushed back any unsure feelings I had and started to head towards the back of the house. The door to my father's room was slightly open, knots in my stomach growing ever so tight. I slowly pushed the door ajar. The hinges let forth an obnoxious loud creak. I had no idea why I was being so quiet. I tried so hard to convince myself that I was the only person in the house, but the butterflies in my stomach refused to go away. The master bedroom was normal. Everything looked clear. I took a few steps while scanning the area. There was a nightstand to the right of his bed, his glasses resting atop, seemingly untouched. He never liked wearing them. He said they made him look like a sissy boy. To the left of the room was the door. Something I don't know what drew me to the door. I wanted to open it. No, I needed to open it. Making my way over to this mysterious door, I made sure to be quiet. Again, don't ask me why. I just felt like I'd be disturbing someone if I made a noise. I bit my lower lip. Placing my hand on the doorknob, I was trembling in anticipation. I closed my eyes, count down from 3, and quickly opened the closet. coats, lots of coats, some pants, and shoes too. If that's what you're into. It was an ordinary walk-in closet. I took a sigh, relieved but secretly disappointed until I saw it. Something shiny on the floor. Kneeling down, I moved a few shoeboxes out of the way. It was a brass handle, bolted to the ground. I had noticed a crease in the carpeted floor. It was a small hatch leading into the basement. My heart raced. What could be down there? My lust for adventure had gotten the better of me. Without thinking, I grabbed the brass handle and flung the hatch open. I peered inside. It was dark. All of my instincts went against what I was about to do, but I completely ignored them. I jumped down. Luckily, it wasn't that high of a drop. I'd be able to pull myself out if I needed to. The basement was dark and extremely dusty. Fishing into my pocket, I pulled out a Zippo lighter. It took me a few tries, but I finally managed to steady the flame to light up the small portion of the room. That's when I saw the last thing I'd ever expect to see in my father's basement. A computer. Sitting on the edge of the room was a small desk, keyboard, mouse, and a monitor. One of those white plastic chairs was pushed into the desk. Curiously, I walked over to the station. The computer looked new, as if it had never been used. This couldn't be my father's. Why would he have such a nice rig like this just sitting in the basement? I pulled the flimsy chair from the desk and took a seat in front of the monitor. I crossed my fingers, leaned over, tried booting up the computer. Eureka! It worked. The Windows 7 boot logo appeared on the screen. Again, it strikes me odd that my father owned such a nice and expensive looking computer. It required me to select a user. There was only one. Disappointment. A chill went down my spine. Disappointment? Why would my father name his profile like that? I clicked on it. It asked me for a password. I grinned and typed Xian, my mother's name. I'll be. It worked. I cocked my head to the side. Something was wrong. His desktop background was solid black. There's no start bar, and there's only one icon. In the middle of the screen was a single executable file. Choke.exe. My hands trembled. I had no idea what I was doing here, why I came here in the first place. I wanted to turn around and get back to the comfort of my apartment. Curiosity wouldn't let me. I couldn't control myself. Almost against my will, I hovered the cursor over the icon and double-clicked. The screen flickered. I figured there was something wrong with the cord. I reached behind the machine, feeling for wires. Impossible. Nothing was plugged in. The computer emitted a high-pitched buzz, almost as if it was trying to work itself too hard. Shades of blue, red, and green flashed on and off in the monitor. The computer's whining became louder and louder, sputtering with life, increasing with intensity every second. All of a sudden, everything became so quiet. I looked at the screen. There was a red dot in the very middle. Text underneath, simply stating, disappointment. My heart was pounding in my chest. Everything had came to a standstill. I relaxed for what seemed for a few seconds. Until I heard it. The sound of heavy breathing and footsteps behind me, coming closer. I didn't dare look or shift my gaze from the computer monitor. The footsteps stopped. Whoever or whatever was behind me had leaned over, their mouth was right next to my ear. I heard a familiar voice whisper, "Choke." With great force, a rope had been wrapped around my neck. I screamed as loud as I could. The rope had been tightened. I'd been yanked backwards out of my chair. I couldn't breathe. My neck was sore. My vision was slowly starting to fade away due to the lack of oxygen. I was going to die. I gagged, and then I clawed at my neck. Nothing was there. I was on my hands and knees gasping for air. My vision had returned. I stood up and staggered around, trying to regain my bearings. I was in the living room, right in front of the fireplace. Looking down on me was the portrait of my mother, looking down upon me with that condescending smirk. Present day, as I'm writing this here, in my one-bedroom dingy apartment, I can honestly say there's no place like home. I have no idea what happened, and honestly, I don't want to know. All I'm sure of is I'm never setting foot in that house again.